Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Star Wars Jedi Knights Issue 1 by Mark Guggenheim, Madabak Mozebekov, and Luis Guerrero. Mark Guggenheim takes us back before the Phantom Menace to the Jedi Order at the height of their power as the entire Jedi Council get involved in the invasion of SYRINX Prime, protecting the capital from the invading Vakura, people from a neighbouring planet. Led by Jedi Masters Mace Windu and Yoda, the Jedi defend the people after peace talks break down. Along with the two Jedi Masters is Ki-Adi-Mundi, Vecna Mooncrest, and the young Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi, who keep the Vakura at bay as Kenobi reveals that his master is on Vakura trying to bring a ceasefire to the war. Now I really like what we are thrown into the deep end of here. It's just feels like a Clone Wars episode, you know, where we're right at the beginning of the episode, we're right in the middle of the action. It's also really cool that we're actually got all these characters that we are all familiar with thanks to the Clone Wars and various other pieces of media. Mark is able to get right into his plot right away because of this, and it's a very simple one. The Jedi just need to stop a war between two planets. On Vakura, Qui-Gon Jinn and Baron Karna, a newly knighted Jedi, try and converse with the leader of the Vakura, General Lafko, to try and come to an agreement in stopping the invasion. The General knows that a withdrawal from SYRINX Prime is impossible, and he just seems to be stalling, not wanting to explain why they can't withdraw since it's complex thanks to their cultures, and basically he's just stringing the Jedi along. While the book so far is filled with Jedi we know like Yoda, Mace Windu, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Mark includes some of his own creations in Vecna Mooncrest earlier on and now Barem, two Jedi who haven't appeared until now. Barem also has notes of Anakin to him. He's very headstrong and overconfident, and we learn that he is with Qui-Gon thanks to having some knowledge of the two planets' cultures and customs, which is why he doesn't really buy what General Lafko is selling them, and it's because of this he becomes very frustrated and decides to ditch the politics game and try and use the Jedi mind trick on the General. However, it doesn't work since it only works on the weak-minded, and doing so makes things a lot worse and causes Lafko to tell Qui-Gon that the Senate and their Jedi lapdogs cannot prevent this invasion from happening. As the peace talks come to a close, Adi Gallia and Sira Longa, another new Jedi Knight, scale the mountains of SYRINX Prime in search of something Sira doesn't really want to do since it's taking them away from the action and from the other Jedi who might need them. Adi, however, knows that this is all part of the Force's plan as they soon come across a prison hidden in the mountains. The Jedi find something truly terrible, but we don't actually get to see what that is, as back on Vakura, Qui-Gon and Baron are both attacked by a blade-wielding assassin. So far the story has been really leaning into the political intrigue thriller stuff. The prequels, specifically episode 2, did moderately well. I quite like the assassination attempts on Queen Amidala and stuff that we see in episode 2, and I think that's probably the strongest part of that movie. And this book kind of continues that here. We get to unravel this mystery, and we've got deadly assassins. The Jedi are trying to protect far off planets. This is really, really interesting stuff that the prequels kind of just touched on a little bit, and more so in the Clone Wars we got a lot more of. Qui-Gon fights the assassin who is ready to battle Jedi, as along with being skilled with a blade, almost cutting up Qui-Gon, instead cutting up his robe, they also have a device which can blast the Jedi back, kind of like a force push but from a tech perspective. Looking to end this quickly, Qui-Gon pins the assassin to a wall with the Force, demanding he tell him which side of the war they work for and who they are and why they are attacking Jedi, but the villain utilizes a smoke bomb to make their quick escape. I really like how Mark writes Qui-Gon since I read and hear Liam Neeson's voice saying these lines, which means for me it's in character of him. He has a line that I think is directly from Phantom Menace when he is attacked by Darth Maul on Tatooine, where he doesn't know who the attacker is. He says, "I wish I knew." He has that line right here, and I hear it in Neeson's voice, and that's kind of like the mark for me that makes me know that, oh, this guy is getting this character. He's actually writing these lines as this character. It's not something out of character for him. I also like how we get to see how he's very quick to act in the face of danger. You know, he's attacking this assassin, keeping him on the back foot, and then when he's done, he kind of goes back to being calm and serene. He's got his hands folded into his cloak. He even cracks some jokes with Baron, which is really quite cool. Baron eventually reunites with Qui-Gon after the attack and finds some of his leftover cloak, deciding to take it as evidence as they ready to return to SYRINX Prime with news of the peace talks failing. Returning to the planet, they meet with the rest of the Jedi and share their their findings, revealing that they believe General Lafko was fearful of something. Qui-Gon doesn't think that the Vikura are being overly truthful with them, but they aren't the aggressors in this war, and the arriving Addy and Sira seem to fuel his suspicions, as the prison camp they found was full of people from Vikura, revealing the invasion was no invasion, but seemingly a rescue mission. We get to see some shades of prequel-era Jedi blindness, fittingly from Ki-Adi-Mundi, who also recently did it in The Acolyte as well, where he has all of this evidence that points to maybe the Vikura's actions were justified and they wanted to get their people back, but he immediately kind of waves that off as maybe they just did this unprovoked, like what their attack is unprovoked, which I don't understand how he could come to that conclusion. Eventually, the Jedi do reach some sort of agreement that both sides are to blame for starting this war, and there is something fishy with both sides. They're both not telling the truth. And this is where a really cool turn in the mission comes, as the Jedi now have to find a way to stop this war by making both sides agree with one another that isn't turning to peace talks or getting political with one side or the other. Yoda has an idea on how to do this, and later the Jedi all split up into teams again, with Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Addy and Sira heading back to Vikura and infiltrating their shipyards, warned to defend themselves only if they must, but their main ability is to stop Vikura's ability to wage war. Meanwhile, on SYRINX Prime, the rest of the Jedi find the SYRINXian weapon forgers, intending on blowing them up with thermal detonators, preventing them from being able to wage war as well. As the two teams begin their missions, Yoda goes to see President Hoss on SYRINX and Mace goes to see General Lafko on Vikura, revealing to both leaders that they both know the truth on this war. I really like the idea of both sides using the complex cultural politics between their people and of their people as this mask for waging war, and subjugating each other. They make excuses to outsiders, which we saw earlier on in the book where General Lafko didn't really want to explain their politics or geopolitics to the Jedi because they maybe wouldn't understand it. It's kind of all an excuse just to wage war with one another, and it's gotten lost in what the real reason is for this war. The Jedi also figuring this out so easily is interesting, as well, as this is more or less exactly what happens during the Clone Wars between the Jedi and the Republic, and they can't figure any of that out because, there's the looming threat of the dark side, and just being so ingrained in tradition and Jedi dogma that they could never think that this would actually happen to them. They thought they were above all of that. Mace and Yoda reveal that the other Jedi are targeting both races' ways to make war, removing them from the equation so now only peace is an option, as both sides can now no longer wage war and they now have to come to an agreement with one another. Mace and Yoda have this cool shared line where they explain to both leaders what a Jedi really is, and that is an agent of peace, but when called to, like in this war, they will fight and they'll never stop fighting until true justice prevails, which is why both sides now have to sort of end this war. Thanks to the Jedi's plan, peace is found between the SYRINXians and the Vikurians, and the Jedi return to the temple on Coruscant with a successful mission. While at the temple, Baron meets with Qui-Gon, revealing that he's actually learned quite a few things while being with the Master. That suspicion isn't truth and theories are not truth. However, he also realizes that the mission they just did actually proves that wrong, but it can also be right as well. He also reveals that he has had some suspicions about the assassin attack and realizes that he has some theories regarding the assassin, revealing that he doesn't think that they were actually part of the SYRINXian Vikura war. They were sent specifically to target Qui-Gon. Now I really like that Baron gets almost like a detective here, going over all the clues, like how the assassin never paid him any attention and was solely focused on killing Qui-Gon. On top of that, he also shows Qui-Gon the part of the robe the assassin cut from him, revealing inside was stitched a transmitter, meaning Qui-Gon was actually being actively tracked by the assassin. This leads to what I assume will be an overarching story, at least for Qui-Gon or for the book, which is who is trying to kill Qui-Gon and why. Now, if I had to hazard a guess, I would think this might be related to Count Dooku. I think by this time he had left the Order, or is at least very, very close to leaving the Order. So maybe this is him sort of testing his old apprentice to see if he's worthy of joining him or would eventually join him. Like maybe the idea is to push Qui-Gon to the dark side somehow. It could also be tied to something new Guggenheim is going to explore in this book, because we're getting new villains coming up, like Aether Prime, who is kind of like an old villain, but not, because they were like a villain who was specifically part of an old toy line that never got made. So they're bringing that character into this book, which is really cool. I like that they're reutilizing old concepts that never got used back in the day as something new. So maybe it has something to do with that. I'm really excited to find out, because a Qui-Gon centric storyline should be really fun. While Qui-Gon and Baron talk, Obi-Wan trains with Yoda, allowing the Force to flow through him so he can see into the future. Yoda explains the future seeing ability to Obi-Wan much like how he explains it to Luke on Dagobah, where you see these visions, but sometimes the visions might come true, sometimes they don't, since the future is always changing and you never know what's exactly going to happen until it starts happening. And we actually get to see some of Yoda's own visions, which have some really fun things in them. We get to see Jango Fett fighting an assassin, Kelleran Beck, the Jedi who was played by Ahmad Best in The Mandalorian, helping out a child, Yaddle fighting Count Dooku, Obi-Wan battling an older version of himself seemingly, the Jedi fighting what appear to be either Drengir or the Nameless from the High Republic. And we also get to see a dark side Yoda. Now obviously some of these, like the dark side Yoda, don't actually end up happening, but I love that there is a good mixture of what if this might happen and things that we definitely are going to see, like Kelleran Beck and Dooku. It's a great tease of things to come, and maybe we do get to see some of those what if things. Like it would be really cool to actually get to explore some of those, since Star Wars what ifs, it's just ripe for that sort of concept. Obi-Wan meanwhile becomes upset at the knowledge that some of these visions might happen, some might not. They just don't know what will happen, since during his training he actually ends up having one of these future visions of Qui-Gon being killed by the assassin we saw earlier in the book. Now this is kind of interesting, because while Obi-Wan's vision doesn't come true as he saw it, the assassin from Vakura does not kill Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon technically does die from an assassin, since he's killed by Darth Maul, who was sent to assassinate the Queen of Naboo, Queen Amidala, and Qui-Gon ended up intervening and protecting her and taking Darth Maul away from the Queen, and then ends up dying on Naboo. So I like that in a way, in a certain point of view, Obi-Wan's vision does eventually become true. Jedi Knights issue 1 is off to a pretty great start, dropping us right into the middle of the action, much like the cool Clone Wars episodes do, for a quick one and done mission with the Jedi Council that plays to the strengths of the prequels with its political thriller, whodunit mystery war vibes. I like the combo of established Jedi like Mace Windu and Yoda being there, as well as a couple of new additions being thrown in, but it never felt like there were too many characters or stories running at the same time. I'm excited for the Qui-Gon centric storyline with the assassin that's continuing into the next couple of issues, as well as some of the cool things to come that Mark Guggenheim and his team tease here at the end of the issue, like Count Dooku, Jango Fett, maybe Drengir and Nameless. Some really fun things to come for this book, I think. I'm going to give this issue an 8.5 out of 10.